Hello, and welcome to Meet Me in Tennessee. I'm your host, Allie, and this podcast is sponsored by the Northeast Tennessee Tourism Association. You can find us online at northeasttennessee.org and on all social media. And today we are sitting down with Carley Lester. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Mr. Lester has previously sat on the board of directors of the Friends of Rocky Fork State Park, as well as teaching education at the high school level for 15 years.
15 years.
15 years. So let's dive right in.
Okay.
Teaching high school for 15 years. What kind of subjects would you teach?
Well, I was an agriculture teacher, so primarily I taught horticulture, which is where I met you, and environment and natural resources.
Yes, I was in Mr. Lester's greenhouse management course.
Yeah.
Very informative.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed having you.
Daniel Boone, so what's the ag program? How is that connected with the state?
With the state?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a curriculum. Agriculture is a curriculum within the state that, I don't know the number of high schools that have an ag curriculum. All these in the area here do, I guess, just about without exception. Even Science Hill and the city, David Crockett, Daniel Boone, Dobbins Bennett, Unicoi, Hampton.
And do you think that's important, getting these kids educated at that level on agriculture and in these kind of hands-on programs?
I think it is important, and I think one of the good things about ag education is FFA, which is not just farmers anymore. It's a leadership type of thing, which is why the name changed from Future Farmers of America to FFA. And so it's a leadership skills, and I think we teach people to be better people and to be leaders, to be able to speak in front of groups of people. And I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities for instance, a forestry contest is this Friday, actually. I'm going to go help Daniel Boone tomorrow afternoon with some tree measurements and stuff. So
Awesome.
I still volunteer there a little bit. It's
Well,
hard to get away from it when you do it for 15 years.
Absolutely. I just thinking of agriculture in terms of tourism, we often say agritourism, and just kind of educating the public on how important farming still is.
Agritourism's just grown leaps and bounds, I guess, just in the last not many years. And you've gone from everything from corn mazes and pumpkin patches to, full-blown tours of farm tours, and like they have up here. And
Yeah.
ARCND puts that on. And
Have you gone on any of those? I always think that.
no, I've not ever made one, but I do want to go to
We'll
one.
put that on the bucket list.
Yeah, that's on the bucket list.
Well, cool. And thinking of education, can you tell us a little bit about your experience volunteering with Rocky Fork State Park on that board?
Well, yes. So Rocky Fork is the 57th state park in Tennessee. So there's lots of state park opportunities from, West Tennessee all the way to, I guess it's about this or Roan Mountain. Rocky Fork or Roan Mountain would be the most eastern ones.
And up until recently, it was the newest, correct? But I believe a new park in Cumberland or Squatchy.
Oh, really? So it was the
upcoming.
newest up until recently. So it may not be, it may be the 56th. I may be wrong on my number.
Okay.
I think there's a total of 57. But at any rate, I took students there. That's kind of how I initially became involved. Probably before it was a park, probably around 2009 or 10, we started taking field trips down there to what became the state park. And when it was designated a state park, I think around, I may be wrong too, 2015-ish, a group of interested, not necessarily, well, concerned or interested individuals kind of got together and started meeting, and eventually that became the Friends of Rocky Fork State Park. And my name's on the charter, which I'm kind of proud that it's kind of like signing the Declaration of Independence, sort of, but it's not. But so then I served after the initial interim board, then when we had formally elected a board, I served 3 two-year terms, so 6 years. And so during that time,
You served.
6 years on the board, and during that time, a lot of things happened in the park, a lot of, I don't want to say development because it's still a very wilderness park. There's not much development, which is one thing I do kind of like about it.
Yeah, me too.
It's mostly wilderness. But, we have handicap access, and we've done a little infrastructure. There's backcountry camping, and there's an interpretive area with a nice fire pit that Ranger Ferris and some other volunteers helped with. And volunteers do trail maintenance and all kinds of things that the fireflies, the synchronous fireflies and the blue ghost
Yes, tell us
fireflies.
a little bit about that.
Well, they thought, I guess at one point they were only really in the Smokies and in Chile or something like that. And then they've been discovered other places. And it's really, if you've never, it's a lottery because you can't, they're pretty fragile and you can't just let people willy-nilly come and go.
Sure, we want to be mindful of disturbing those ecosystems.
Right. So there's a limited number of people that can go do it. And I'll still
how
volunteer for that
special.
because it is very cool. And if any of your listeners or watchers ever get an opportunity to enter the lottery and to try to go see it, it's local and it's really incredible.
And that's something they could just do right through the state park website.
Yes, state park website. And there's so many, I don't want to jump the gun, there's so many opportunities on state park websites too that
I'm sure.
for educational opportunities. And you can just go to state parks, TennesseeStateParks.com, I think, and go. There's actually a thing you can find a park. You can click on like an A to Z map, and all the parks in the state come up on a map, and you click on one, and if you go over, it's down on the left margin that says upcoming events, and then there's a whole calendar of some educational opportunities, some just fun opportunities.
Awesome. And you said that was TN State Parks?
TNStateParks.com.
Okay, you heard that out there. If you're interested to go explore that further for educational opportunities, events, and I'm assuming maybe volunteer opportunities.
Volunteer opportunities are more posted on, I think, more with friends because that's kind of that leg of state parks. Kind of runs through friends groups like Friends of Rocky Fork State Park. There's not all, but a lot of state parks have friends organizations.
Sure, we'll circle back on that toward the end of the episode for how folks can get involved. So thinking about the state park over the 6-year period, how did you witness the visitor impact from the opening of the park?
If you build it, they will come, from a movie. I think, it started as, well, the original, it was going to be probably developed into a condo or cabin rental type of thing, maybe. And then when it became designated state park, there were around 1,900 acres of this huge tract, which comprised of nearly 10,000 acres, mostly in Unicoi County. I think it flopped over into green a little bit. And so it was designated in different ways, and the final nearly 2,000 acres then became what was then Rocky Fork State Park and now Lamar Alexander Rocky Fork State Park. The name changed and got a lot longer. But, just with once it became a state park and a parking lot was built, there was not much place to park prior.
Sure.
And it's packed full a lot of times. It's a beautiful place, and a lot of people visit from all over, from I guess Western North Carolina to all over Tennessee and other surrounding states. A really popular thing that really promotes the park is in April the Fiddlers Convention, Handle Flag Pond School, which is kind of put on by the park, and it is really a fun thing. If anybody would like to go check that out,
there's a lot of cool things going on at this park. Fiddlers Convention, the fireflies, and what about the fishing?
Well, the fishing, the Rocky Fork Creek, which has been said to be the cleanest water in the Nolichucky River watershed, supports native brook trout. They don't stock trout in the park. Below the park, TWRA stocks rainbows.
Okay.
But in the park, you're in a native fishery, which is really neat. Brook trout, they don't get real big there, but they're plentiful, and it's a lot of fun to fly fish for them. So, it's cool to have a native fishery.
Yeah.
In the neighborhood too. That's
in this almost wilderness-like area. So if you're out there backcountry camping or anything of that nature, permits are required.
Permits are required, and reservation systems on the Rocky Fork State Park website.
Okay.
And there are, I'm going to say, 5 backcountry campsites that are all. I mean, I visited every one of them, and they're all it's lovely.
Right, you're truly immersed in nature. I mean, you can't hear traffic or anything.
No.
City bustle.
It's actually there's a section that's designated a what is that, dark area thing?
Dark area or dark skies?
Dark sky area, whatever it is. Yeah, there's a place there designated as a dark sky area.
Is there?
So, yeah, that's within the last year or so, probably.
Oh, cool.
Which is really neat if you like
Yeah.
stargazing.
And just the different skill levels of hikes. Is it White House Cliffs Trails? That's the correct one. Beautiful views up
Yeah,
there.
beautiful views up there.
And lots of wildlife.
Lots of wildlife.
Yep.
Yeah, tons
Rattlesnakes. I'm just going to throw it out there because I've seen them out there.
I've seen many
With you,
rattlesnakes.
actually.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Bears. There's just a lot of stuff. Lots of birding.
Birding. Yep.
And then within the streams, they actually do snorkeling programs too in the streams, looking at aquatic life, and
No way.
they're led a ranger or seasonal
Ooh,
ranger.
can we talk about some of the types of birds and trees in that area?
Oh gosh.
I
Well,
know you're kind of a tree wizard.
it was. I don't know about that. It was logged many years ago, and so everything there's regrowth. Of course, there's a heavy population of hemlocks, which are in trouble.
Okay, are they invasive?
From the hemlock woolly adelgid, yes, from an invasive species. And
Okay.
they've done some efforts to control those through, there's an insecticide injection, and there's also a beneficial insect that feeds on woolly adelgid. So they've made some attempts to put those in, which has helped, I think, some. And then the usual oaks, poplars, locusts. I don't know, there's just a variety of trees. There's a lot of native wildflowers, and I couldn't even begin to name all those. I'm no expert on that either, but
Lots of mushrooms. Last time
Lots
we
of
went
mushrooms.
up there, just all kinds of different mushrooms popping
Yeah.
up.
and they do fall and spring, both wildflower hikes too, when those start popping in the spring, and then there's another set in the fall. So
What about birds? What are some birds you've seen up that way? Any stand out?
pileated woodpeckers, lots of woodpeckers and juncos and small birds, big birds, goldfinches, all kind of finches, and
Like
there's
a
a lot
Dr.
of birds.
Seuss book. Small birds, big birds.
Big birds, yeah.
Twirly birds. So we're thinking about like all this beautiful space up there, and it's wild and it's protected, and like you said, it could have been condos or developed in some capacity. So when we're thinking about promoting our state parks to visitors, I just think it's so important that we parallel conservation efforts and we educate the public. So what are some good practices for folks to take into mind when they visit our state parks?
If you pack it in, bring it out. Dogs are, I mean, I hike with my dog, you hike with your dogs. Dogs are very popular. Clean up after them. And then when you clean up after them, don't leave it in a bag in the fork
the
of a
trail.
tree. Bring it, I know it's part of the cost of taking along your tag along friend.
Right.
Bring it out.
Now, at these heavy populated areas, folks, there are typically trash cans right at the park sites or at the trailheads.
There are. And one of the things that really, a pet peeve is I see frequently, way back in the backcountry, cigarette butts. They don't go away. Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm not pro or con smoking, but bring your cigarette butts out with you. They stay, they linger for years. And
Pack it in, pack it out. That's
pack
the
it in,
best.
pack it out. Just like normal. Leave no trace, all that stuff. Stay on the trail. That's a biggie.
Yeah.
They do trail maintenance to keep those, open and inviting for people to walk on the trails. Don't go way off trail. And there's trails being developed all the time. There's a potential link from the very back side of the park in Blockstand Creek. There's going to be a link to the Appalachian Trail. There's already a link at Flint Mountain to the Appalachian Trail. It's one of probably the only state park in Tennessee that has access from the park to the Appalachian Trail. So
Do you know
that's
off the
kinda
top of your head that mileage? I'm just curious.
cool.
From the park to the AT?
Well, on Flint Creek, I'd say that's about 6 miles, 6-ish miles,
That's pretty
maybe
special.
7. It's uphill, uphill
Yeah.
both ways. It's uphill one way, but yeah, it is pretty special. And then your new link it'll be a little bit further from the parking lot to the new connection.
Cool.
But it's on it's on an old railroad bed that was used for logging.
Our rails to trails.
Yeah,
I love
sort
seeing
of.
those repairs. It's like an upcycling of old trails.
Absolutely.
But thinking back to that importance of why people should stay on the trail. Why is that?
Well,
Disturbing ecosystems and
sure,
habitats.
disturbing ecosystems, trampling on lots of neat native plants, and just generally, people swing from tree limbs and break them, and that sets up an opportunity for disease in trees and all kinds of things like that. So it's just, there's lots of beauty on the trail, and even just going, if you just want to go for a Sunday walk at Rocky Fork, I know we're talking a lot about Rocky Fork. I hope that the other parks don't get mad. But I mean, just going for a Sunday walk, you can walk up Rocky Fork Creek for 100 yards or a few miles and just enjoy the beauty of the creek with kids or whatever, and not
Sure.
really go into the back country.
Well, I think
And you
it's
probably won't see any rattlesnakes or bears down there either,
probably not.
if you're a snakeophobe or something. So
I think it's good to use Rocky Fork as an example because it is a newer state park. You have experience there, and it's a highly visited park. So thinking of conservation and parking, what are some tips you could offer for folks who get to the park and they can't find parking? Or
well, there's
maybe,
an expansion. There is an expansion
and this is something we deal with at
scheduled
several
to
state
occur.
parks.
Sure, it is. So if the parking lot's full, there are designated spots, and they've even put those like bumper parking lot yellow stoppers along the road. There are probably a dozen or more additional parking spaces as you come up Rocky Fork Road.
Sure.
And the parking lot holds a great number of cars.
I just think
Sometimes for events, we run shuttles. The ranger station is not in the park. It's right up on Jenny Moore Road, I guess it'd be just south of the park off the old Asheville Highway, and the old rock house that's on the corner right there of where you turn off to go to Devil's Fork Gap. And so sometimes we run shuttles from there, and there's sometimes programs up there too
okay.
at the ranger station, and T-shirts, and
And
caps
you
and stuff.
get your souvenirs.
Got to throw that in.
But I just think it's such an important conversation that needs to keep recurring as like places like Roan Mountain. We see a lot of traffic up there and people parking down the road like they're at Yellowstone.
Roan Mountain is, as sometimes you can't even, I mean, I've gone up there and had to turn around and leave because there just wasn't any place to park without really getting off the road and
Sure.
parking in the wrong place.
And we think of back in the high school day. You remember the hiking club? That was a
Oh, yeah.
very brief moment. I remember going up there with groups of friends, and there wasn't a soul on the
Right.
mountain.
Yeah, I remember that too, even. And I'm not a native of here, but yeah.
So now sharing it, which we're so excited to share our beautiful public lands with folks, but then also, again, just preaching almost conservation and good practice on the trail.
But I mean, that's really a two-edged sword because when I love the parks. I love Rocky Fork State Park, obviously. But I also know when more people come, the potential for more, ecosystem damages and trampling and trash and
It is
just
a
name
two-edged
it.
sword. Absolutely.
So, while it's nice to share them, if people would just be, conservation minded about, just thinking about the resource and thinking about what people can do to just protect or to take care of it, when you're there. Think about the next people that will come. And
Absolutely. And I just I applaud you for teaching students that at a fundamental level, because I think that's really where it starts. And for those who got out of school without learning about conservation, I don't know what that looks like, if it looks like more signage or just amplified access on the web. But I think it starts with the conversation and just continuing those conversations.
it does. I remember a project I did in environmental science was we mapped a watershed, and I used Long Branch in Rocky Fork State Park. It really begins in Rocky Fork State Park and empties into Rocky Fork Creek. And so we take a topographic map and we kind of look at the high points around. I'm talking with my hands. Just to locate the high points around the ridges where the water drains into Long Branch. And then we do a calculation to figure out how many acres are in that. And it's a little stream that you can step across. And there's around 400 or more acres just in that watershed. And so everything that happens, if you amplify that to the Daniel Boone High School parking lot, that water all has to go somewhere. So every drop of oil, every bit of trash that you throw out, every cigarette butt,
Yes.
potentially can enter, plastic, whatever, can enter those waterways. And just that little stream there's a 400 acre area that impacts that stream. And so you can blow that up into, the millions of acres in the Mississippi River watershed. I've been able to go to the headwaters of the Mississippi. I went to the headwaters of the Missouri this summer, which is a huge watershed that is part of the Mississippi River watershed, the Missouri River, and just thinking on the big impact of what a little action has to do with the big impact or the big picture of those watersheds is really significant. And I think if people would be mindful of that.
Absolutely. So thinking of the life of that cigarette butt starting at the trail.
I know I've
if
talked
there was
a lot
a
about cigarette
video,
sure,
showing people how that affects that waterway with pollutants, then
I've often said if, to take care of or to be a conservationist or to be conservation minded doesn't take huge actions. I've always said if a whole lot of people did a little something, then everything would be a lot better. It doesn't take a monumental task completion to make the change. It's just a lot of people doing something small. That makes a big difference.
It
And that's what we
does.
need.
And those words have stuck with me since high school. You saying that?
Did I say that when you were
You
in high
said
school?
that, yeah.
That's cool. I'm
So
glad
just
it stuck.
sharing those little tidbits here and there, like to a friend or a neighbor,
Yeah.
because it does all start with us and our actions. So I think that's pretty much touched on the state park, because I can't help but think about Max Patch. If you'll recall, especially for us locals here, that really just it stuck out. Like when one of our favorite trails within a day driving
Sure.
was shut down for camping, and you're talking right off the Appalachian Trail, just bags and bags of trash from overpopulated visitation. And that's something that we don't want to continue to see.
And it's a global scale too. I mean, you think of the trash. It's not certainly a local thing, but look at Mount Everest and those expeditions up
Right.
there. It's just impossible to get rid of it. If you take in or take out what you take in, then it can make a difference, even a small
Absolutely.
scale.
So do you think conservation is pretty important?
Oh yeah, I think it's very important.
I would say it's equally as important as promoting these lands that we love, is promoting conservation alongside them. And then thinking about getting into the fall season, this is a really, really big time for Tennessee, as it's one of the most beautiful
yeah.
places to see the leaves changing. Appalachian Mountains will see record numbers of visitors this year. So you've already said practice just starts with yourself, making a small difference. What are some good tips we could share with our listeners to continue practicing good stewardship as they come and visit our public lands this fall in Northeast Tennessee?
I think be patient because there'll be a lot of people. I don't know if you've driven up the Blue Ridge Parkway during this fall season, but
I tend to stay away.
it's bumper to bumper traffic. Be mindful of others, and that means right now and then who's coming next. And again, it's trash and parking in the right places. And, if the designated spot where you want to stop is full, go on down the road. There's probably an opening somewhere. And if you need to, maybe you can turn around and come back and somebody's left.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe like looking out for that signage and like Mr. Lester said, parking in those designated areas, looking for trash bins, recycle bins. And then, when you were talking about those waterways, it made me think how important it is to still learn map reading as a skill. Like this is just a tangent I'm going off of now, but how important that is that, that's how you are able to see how the water flows down and down into these big watersheds. I think that's a good education tool.
I think it is too, and I think it's important enough that that's one reason that we worked on that in high school environmental classes.
Yeah, and I don't even want to think that that's a lost art.
Well, we have access to everything on our phones. I have an app on my phone that's called I don't know what it's called, but you can open this app and just move your phone around, and it identifies every mountain that you can see, even if they're in clouds. You can name all these things. So the point is, and there's a compass on there, but the point is, we have so much access to so many things now that learning things like reading a paper map and using an actual compass, which doesn't have a battery in it, because when that dies, your compass doesn't work anymore. I think is important, especially if you spend any time outdoors, whether you're a geek about it, kind of like I am, or whether you just want to go out there and, I think it's a decent skill. And it is sort of, I guess, a lost skill. Maybe, scouting, Boy Scouts,
Yeah.
Do it. And maybe your education program, your high school education program, ROTC has a orienteering, or our ROTC program at Daniel Boone has an orienteering section that they do. And there's contests about it too. So even the state forestry contest, I was mentioning the district one that's coming up next week, but the state forestry contest has a compass and pacing where there's about 10 points, and as far as the contest, it's an individual thing. You take a bearing from where you are to the next point, and then you pace. You have to know how far your stride is, and you pace, and you write down the bearing, and you write down the number of or the number of feet from point to point to point. It's a difficult part of the contest, but it's something that, it's fun to teach. And
It's fun, and I think it's important to know still. It's crazy because my daughter, I didn't have a phone for like a week, and she was introduced to the radio, and she couldn't comprehend that it wasn't like Pandora or Spotify or something. She was like, "Turn the song, Mom." And I'm like, "You can't turn the song. We're just listening to whatever comes on."
Isn't that funny?
And there's commercials, just mind-blowing to her.
That's funny. I remember the first time my children had a truck that had roll down windows, and they couldn't figure out for a minute, how do you roll the windows? They were young. How do you roll the windows down? I said, you got to roll that thing.
And pictures on all of it. It's just all.
We have so much access to so much stuff now that the actual learning of how to do stuff, is kind of, it seems to become less important. And that I don't like that.
I don't either. So we're thankful for educators as yourself.
Well, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to switch it up a little bit.
Okay.
So you're known to have some pretty decent music tastes. We were talking a little bit earlier about the Tedeschi Truck Band. What would someone find on your latest playlist?
Widespread Panic, Tedeschi Trucks, Wood Brothers. It's a cornucopia of things. Miles Davis would be on there. Some jazz. There'd be jazz on there.
Jazz, yeah. I've really been into jazz lately with the changing of the seasons.
I've read Allman Brothers. I've read Greg Allman's book, Not My Cross to Bear, which is an incredible story of the Allman Brothers. I read Miles Davis' biography, which was really good. I'm a trumpet player from way back, so I'm obviously a Miles Davis fan.
You're a trumpet player?
Oh, yeah, in high school and at UT
Cool.
for a little bit, yeah. But then I've also read the Fish book. I'm a Fish fan too, a fish head. And then I just finished the Creedence Clearwater Revival book. So I've read 4 kind of music band history
You've been
books.
reading up a storm here
I
lately.
know. I enjoy reading. So this is things that interest me. Kind of another geeky thing, I guess. But
Any upcoming shows you're excited about?
yeah, the Wood Brothers, October 20th at Salvage Station. It's coming up.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
They're so fun.
Yeah, they are super fun.
Chris Wood has been one of the Wood Brothers. I don't know if you may not know this. He has, at Rhythm and Roots, it was the Wood Brothers, the Oliver Woods trio, not the Wood Brothers. But his bass playing brother, Chris and Oliver Brothers Woods, has been farming in British Columbia. He has a produce and flower farm. You can follow him on Twitter.
How cool is that?
Yeah, BC. Yeah.
I love those little
I
side
know.
notes.
He kind of disappeared, and I started searching. I wonder where Chris went. He also plays with the jazz group, Medeski Martin and Wood.
Oh, how cool.
So, but anyway, yeah, that's kind of neat. So there's a connection to music and produce farming.
We went and saw Mighty Popular here recently. Have you heard of them?
Yes, I've heard of them.
Oh, my goodness. Just some good down-home bluegrass.
Yeah.
Feeds the soul.
Yeah.
So we'll reel it back in a little bit. We talked a little bit about practicing good conservation tips when you visit Northeast Tennessee public lands and our state parks this season and beyond. Any resources you can share with the listeners about those volunteer opportunities, whether through Rocky Fork State Park website or any recommendations there?
Sure. Well, there are always opportunities. Go on the state parks website, tnstateparks.com. I hope I'm saying that right. State Parks may fire me if I'm not. And then if you'll search Friends friends groups of state parks. Like I
Okay.
say, they don't all have them, but a lot do, and get involved with one of those.
Okay.
You know, again, going back to Rocky Fork, we were actually able to we raised enough funds to assist with the purchase of a little additional land that was added to Rocky Fork State Park. So there's opportunities for just donations or to go out there and weed eat, cut down trees or whatever. Not cut down trees, but cut down small trees. You have to be a sawyer to cut down big trees. But there are tons of opportunities. So go to the State Parks website. You can research friends groups. Appalachian Highlands Conservancy has volunteer opportunities. They take care of the balls, I think, at Rome Mountain.
Awesome.
And they have, they have volunteer days up there when a group of people go and clear out small vegetation and stuff up there. So there's just stuff like that. It's just tons of opportunities if you want to get out there and do it.
Awesome. So be sure to check out those resources, and just remember when visiting that anything from picking up your trash to packing in what you pack out can make all the big difference. Mr. Lester, I appreciate all you do for the community and for educating our youth on good conservation practices and volunteerism.
Well, thank you.
And beyond.
I think it's important.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, you can check out more about Mr. Lester and other leaders for A Litter-Free Tennessee on northeasttennessee.org. And for upcoming events and happenings in Northeast Tennessee, be sure to follow us on all the socials and check out that website again at northeasttennessee.org, where there is more up here to do, see, and be when you meet me in Tennessee. Thanks for tuning in.